afternoon, and thank you all once again for joining us at Big Connect, where we really believe that knowledge is power. As a representative of the city of Miramar, I am Karen Yvette Hollis. I am the one that the city has empowered to equip and design and programs and services that will assist small minority and disadvantaged businesses into having more inclusion and being able to take advantage of more contracting opportunities with the city. The way in which we have developed to do that is through the Business Inclusion and Diversity Program, which we term so eloquently as BID. Big Connect is an extension or the web or technology portal of that now allows us to be able to do webinars instead of our usual monthly workshops that we had pre COVID 19. As many of you, the city as well, we are seeking opportunities and ways in which we can continue to provide our services to you. We want you to know that we are still very much working as a city. We continue to do all that we can to try to support businesses throughout this pandemic. We also continue to desire to bring you additional information that can assist all of you in being able to elevate your business services and the skills and abilities that you have so that post COVID, you're in a better position to be able to grow your business again. So today is no different. We have some amazing panelists, two amazing panelists that are going to be here with us today. And they are Mr. Maurice Gray and we have Miss Gerri Detweiler. The two of them have two interesting programs that are going to offer some financial strategies that businesses can and should consider in terms of navigating through this pandemic. And really, Gerri, I'm excited about the information she's going to be able to add too. Now that the PPP loan has been extended, the deadline, yes, we have some information that is very relevant and current that's going to assist businesses in being able to navigate and access those funds, those federal funds. Gerri will give you more information about that. But first, we're going to start off with Mr. Maurice Gray. Mr. Maurice Gray is the director of the business support services for Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs, if you are not aware, has a 10,000 small business program where they allow and assist minority businesses in financial strategies and methods that can assist them in growing. This program, which is housed at Miami-Dade College, is responsible for the recruitment of businesses and for providing businesses support services and program participants to be able to go into these classes. And he helps to develop, manage, and coordinate with his business partners different relationships and activities that help businesses grow. Now, as for Mr. Gray himself, he is a well-known served as a leader and a relationship manager for the banking industry for over 15 years while working in both middle market and business banking. So he's definitely a financial expert. He has also worked as a consultant to small businesses while creating business plans, identifying opportunities, and streamlining operations. Maurice's past and present civic involvement has and it includes several board members with Goodwill of South Florida and leadership council member with the chair of the mentoring committee program, and he takes stock in children mentoring program. He received his BA degree in sociology from the Davidson and an MBA from Case and Western Reserve University. Like me, Maurice enjoys spending time with his wife and two sons. I have a husband and two sons, and I always call him my brother from another mother because my native name is Karen Gray, and my brother is Maurice Gray. So I enjoyed meeting him a couple of years ago to let him know that you have the exact same name as my brother. But I'd like for you all to give him your undivided attention. I'd like to introduce to some and definitely acquaint to others again, Mr. Maurice Gray, who will be giving you more information on this 10,000 small business program being advanced by Goldman Sachs. Mr. Gray, without further ado, if you can please take the floor, introduce yourself, and allow the businesses and the participants to know a little more about not only the Goldman Sachs program, what it is that they can do to position themselves to take advantage of the next class that's being offered. Without further ado, Mr. Gray.
Okay, good morning. Good morning.
Good
First,
afternoon.
good afternoon. The day's been going quickly for me. I'm still working on morning
Yes.
things. But first of all, I'd like to thank you, Karen, personally, as well as the city of Miramar in general for, um, first of all, presenting this type of valuable resource and information to business owners, and then secondly, having us as a part of this. I wanted to take just a brief moment to give an overview of our program. Despite my background in banking, which I think has served me well in moving to this role to help businesses, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program is really about education. So, despite the what usually comes to mind when people think of Goldman Sachs, which is finance, this program is designed to be an educational program. So, I like to make that clarification, especially in a time when Goldman Sachs has also initiated some efforts to put actual dollars into the PPP program and some other initiatives. So I want to be clear that this is an educational program. This program is designed to help existing businesses to go to the next level. So basically, help business owners to revise or create a plan for growth. Okay, so our goal is to take your existing business, identify those issues, or identify where you want to go in the future, and then help you to create a plan with the help of subject matter experts and instructors and business advisors to create a plan that you can use to move your business forward. Okay. Now, taking a step back, um, I want to let you know, as I said, this program is sponsored by Goldman Sachs, which started about 9 years ago nationwide with a $500 million commitment from Goldman Sachs to help small businesses. Um, and to date, there are currently 22 sites around the United States that offer the 10,000 Small Businesses program. Many of them are like Miami-Dade College, of which, as I said, for whom I work. And the model is pretty consistent across the United States that the deliverers of this curriculum are community colleges, okay, ranging from LaGuardia Community College in New York to Long Beach Community College out in California and several points in between, Philadelphia, Ohio, Chicago, and the like. As I said, there's 17 sites, or 20, roughly 22 sites around the country. As I say, all having the goal of helping business to go from where they are to where they would like to be, with the primary measurement from our perspective being growing revenue and increasing the number of employees or job opportunities that exist in these areas that we serve. Okay. So essentially, your success is our success. If you grow your revenue and you're able to add some jobs to the local community, that's what we're looking for. That's how we measure ourselves. And we've amassed some statistics over the years across the country, and I'll share some of those with you later. Would you go to the next slide, Paul? So my goal for today will be to obviously share some information with you. For some of you, it will be additional information about our program, and for some of you, it will be an introduction. But I will tell you about some of the participants who've gone through our program, what the program consists of, what you can expect if you participate, who should apply, and what type of information we ask for. As I said, this is an application process. Um, However, um, I also want to stress that there's no cost for this program. Okay, so if you're accepted into this program, you get the benefit of a curriculum that has been created by thought leaders in the field of entrepreneurship. And I'll share some of that information with you as we move forward. Um, but you also get to do that at no cost. You get to spend time working on your own business and asking people questions about what you can do to grow your business. Okay, so the objective is that we take what are identified as best practices in entrepreneurship, and then we help you to tailor that to your industry and your specific business. Okay, that's what we do in a nutshell. Next slide, please. To date, our program here at Miami-Dade College has been in existence since October of 2013. Okay. Um, and to date, we have graduated 526 businesses. Okay, roughly about 500, I'm sorry, roughly 90 to 100 per year. Okay, that go through our program um, in 3-month intervals. Okay, so this is a classroom based program. And obviously, because we're dealing with the COVID situation and distancing and things of that nature, there are currently discussions as to what the program will look like in a virtual environment. Okay, although it hasn't been made definite yet, that's obviously appears to be where we're trending. Okay, um, but in terms of the historical participants, this program had traditionally been an in-class program that met on average a day per week for a full day. So business owners would actually come down to Miami-Dade College downtown and go through some particular business management discipline for the day. Okay, starting with some very broad ideation on the front end, translating into more specific actionable items as we move through the curriculum. Okay, but just to give you some idea, so like I said, that structure is going to change more than likely. Um, and certainly, we certainly felt that the in-person environment had obviously comes with a lot of benefits just in terms of camaraderie and business owners being able to ask each other's questions in real time. And it really added some additional color to the curriculum in terms of, hey, well, since we're talking about that, here's what my business has gone through as it may help others. Okay. And we're certainly going to try to replicate that type of dynamic interaction that goes beyond what would be, kind of a typical sedentary, just listening to a lecturer. Okay. But to give you some perspective, if you look at the second bullet point here on this particular slide, you'll see this program has had participants who've been in operation for as few as 2 years to 100 years. They have employed employees from as few as 4 to as many as 150. And I'll point you to the last slide, the last bullet point, which says annual revenues of more than $150,000. Those particular bullet points are our admissions criteria. Okay. A minimum of 2 years in business, a minimum of 4 employees, and annual revenues of 150,000 for your last year. Okay. And I'll speak more about that and add a little context to that. I did, if you will go back to the other slide. So I particularly wanted to point out as well, although those are our criteria, I wanted to point your attention to the second from the bottom, where it represents our participants have represented a range of industries. We are not, we're industry agnostic. We don't preclude certain industries from participating in the program. So basically all business types are eligible. And also I want to point out something we're very proud of is that 48% of our graduates of this program have been women-owned businesses. Um, as I said, we're very proud of that as the general or average percentage of business ownership for women-owned businesses in the general population is about between 20 and 25%. So we certainly, feel as though we're making an impact or hope to make an impact on minority-owned businesses. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I said before, the foundation of this program is education. Okay, so in a not so rhetorical sense, we ask people on the first day, what can you do to grow your business? Okay, that's our objective, and that's where we start. As you see here, look over to the left, we have a curriculum that was created by Babson College out of Boston. And Babson is regarded as the premier institution for entrepreneurial education in the country. And that's ranked by US News and World Report. They've held that distinction for roughly the past 20 years or so. Okay. And Goldman Sachs, in wanting to create a top notch program for small businesses, sought out their expertise and their based on the many years of due diligence that they've done to identify what helps businesses to thrive. Okay. And that was the basis of their curriculum. So this was a very guided process. Each of our modules, as we call them, which are our classroom sessions, are curriculum and materials, questions, and information that has been created by Babson. Okay, and it's designed to ask probing questions that initiate thought that will then turn into actionable items for the business owner. So that's kind of our model, is that we ask you some questions, we get you scratching your head, thinking about your business. You know, we get you all turned upside down, and then we help you to define clarity as to where you are, and then how do you get to where you want to go. Okay. You'll also see that our program consists of a support network, which takes on some different perspectives, if you will, as you move through our program. First and foremost, our instructors are deemed to be subject matter experts. This program is not delivered by one individual, you know, as a typical college course or such would be, that carries or delivers all the material. Um, on the contrary, each of our different discussion areas, be it marketing, operations, finance, is taught by an individual who is either an adjunct professor or a practitioner in private industry. Okay. Um, Also, from an advice standpoint, each of our participants in the program is paired with a business advisor. Okay. Not a consultant, not someone who's going to dictate to you what you should do, but I like to define it as, in this program, I used to be a business advisor. We answer questions with questions. Okay. So if you ask us a question, oh, I don't know what to do with my human resources, I have a problem employee or this and that, that's followed by a question to help you get to clarity. Much like, if I liken this process to someone going to a mental health professional. We've all seen that image of, they say, okay, sit down on the couch and tell me what's going on. Okay. And usually, by virtue of people talking through things, as opposed to allowing these things just to kind of bounce around in an unorganized manner, it helps to bring clarity. A lot of people, I've had conversations with business owners, and just by me asking for clarification as to how they do current things, what their capabilities are in terms of serving customers, what do they feel their strengths are, they begin to see more clearly where they should be focusing their energy in the market. Okay. And that's kind of a reversal of, or you kind of get to that sometimes when we ask the question, so who are your customers? And a business owner will say, well, I can sell to anyone. Okay, then the question becomes, how do you market to everyone? Okay, so through that process, you begin to whittle down and to focus. Okay, really, our goal is to get you, as you can appreciate as a business owner, there are many things that you can be doing in your business. But unless you focus and get one of those things going, you will be all over the place. Okay, so that's our goal. Get you to focus on one opportunity, and then by virtue of focusing on an opportunity, we put that opportunity into our system, if you will. So if you say you want to do X, what does that look like in your marketing? What does that look like to your human resources? What is it going to do to your operations? What is it going to do to your capital needs? And so on. So you begin to understand how that works. So you get it, the advice or the assistance of an advisor while you're in the program to help you there. And then you also, once you graduate from this program, become a member of our National Alumni Network. Okay, so it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving, where you then have access to business owners from all around the country to whom you can pose questions and get, and so on. And hopefully, all these things come together to create revenue growth and job creation. Okay, that's our goal. Next slide, please. Okay, as you see here, this just kind of gives you a glimpse into the education. I've talked about the interactive discussion-based program that we have. So you're not being lectured to all day. On the contrary, we usually start discussions and then say, hey, take 10 minutes and partner up and talk about how you've overcome an employee corrective action issue that you've had. Okay, so you begin to be able to talk and also get information from other people, which a lot of participants in our program acknowledge that outside of their business, they really don't have business confidants. Okay, they're kind of the star of their family. They're the person that has their own business. You know, the sun always shines on them, but they admit they don't really have people to bounce ideas off of. Okay, so this gives you that venue And beyond this venue, once you become a graduate of this program, typically a business owner will go through this program with about 30 other business owners. And as you can appreciate, by spending 3 months with a group of people, you get to know people pretty well. Okay. And it turns in kind of to a de facto board in some cases. Um, if nothing else, a peer group, okay, that you can bounce ideas off of. The program also has measurable outcomes. I'll talk about that. Some of the surveying we do recognized as best in class, as I told you, from our affiliation with Babson College. And there's some other organizations, partner organizations I'm going to tell you about as well, and created in partnership with leading experts. Okay, so Goldman Sachs, in setting out this program, wanted to bring together the best minds around entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's some of the curriculum highlights. Our program actually consists of, when we were meeting in person, about 14 meeting dates over 3 months. Okay, so in our normal structure, the program lasted for 13 to 15 weeks. So we roughly say 3 months. Depends on what time of year. And sometimes we have to break for extended holidays, like in the fourth quarter for Christmas and Thanksgiving, stuff like that. But as I said, we refer to our classroom sessions as modules. And each of those modules, um, as I said, is designed to help you refine your idea. But everything in this program starts with, I'll point your attention over to the bottom left-hand side of this, identifying new business opportunities. That's what this program is all about. We challenge the businesses in our program to do something new. If you come into this program and you say, well, I'm going to clean up my warehouse, or I'm going to freshen up my marketing brochure, we would say, okay, we believe that's part of the plan, but have you identified a new potential source of revenue? We want the businesses that leave our program to be doing something new. Either they're going after a customer base that they previously didn't do business with, or they're offering a new product SKU to their customers that they believe is going to complement what they're doing and help them bring in additional revenue. But we're not satisfied if you say, yeah, I'm just going to turn it up a notch as to what I'm already doing. That's not what we're about. So our main focus initially is to get business owners think broadly about your business. In an ideal world, what would your business look like? And then we help you to move through that. You see that um, some of these bullet points capture the subsequent modules. You see in the top center, understanding cash flow, which we go through in our, we actually have 3 modules dedicated to financial matters. Okay, understanding your statements. Okay, understanding your profit and loss and your balance sheet and movements on those things that you need to keep your eye on. Okay, creating a dashboard. We talk about those things. Also, you'll see I talked about maximizing marketing strategy. Okay, you come up with a great idea to get to these customers, but how are you going to get those customers? Okay. Also, above that, it says attract top talent. Like I said, you could have a great idea, but you don't have the people in house to drive it. Okay. You may want to, if you're a plumber, you may want to inject a new type of process, but you're not educated on that. So maybe you need to bring in someone who's been trained on that. So looking at your business as a whole and how you move it forward. We also talk about negotiation tactics in one of our clinics and so on. Next slide, please. So this goes back to the support network that I spoke about. So I won't stay on that too long. You see business advising, subject matter experts in our um, delivery team, and also the alumni network that I mentioned as well. Next slide. This just highlights some of our partners. Obviously, at the core of the partnership is Miami-Dade College and Goldman Sachs. And then over to the right-hand side, you see Babson College, who I've mentioned. And also there's another organization called ICIC, which is an acronym for the Initiative for Competitive Inner Cities. And they're a research organization out of Boston, started by Dr. Michael Porter of the Harvard Business School, that researches urban economies and the businesses that reside there. So basically, looking at the factors that give rise to businesses doing well in urban environments. And within our program structure, ICIC is essentially our admissions group. They establish those minimum criteria in the research that they've done in saying that a business that has reached this level of revenue, employees, and time in business should have a platform on which we can help them to grow. Okay, so there's a method to why we've established those minimum criteria. Okay,
Now, Maurice, if I
yes,
can interject, I have a question for you because I want to
yes,
make sure, in terms of that minimum requirement for the 150,000 annual
yes,
revenue. Now, I understand, and given 2020, I mean, given COVID in
yes,
2020, now that the particular class for the fall coming up is closed in terms of registration. So that's the fall class that's going to be coming
yes,
up.
yes.
And let me just let the participants know if you have any particular questions for Maurice, just say to his name and you can type in your question. And even after the next presenter starts, he'll be responding to questions. So don't think that I'm going to allow him to get away from you, and all of your questions
Mhm.
will be answered. But Maurice, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you guys considering, I love the fact that you're considering the new webinar platform. Are you
Yes.
also considering making some adjustments to the annual revenue, the 150K? Because in the midst of the COVID crisis,
Hmm.
the class that we'll be entering and we're going to be making available will be the January
Yes.
class, which
Yes.
means that the financials that you're looking for will be possibly the 2020 financials, which may not accurately reflect what their capabilities are. Will you,
Hmm.
or has Goldman Sachs? I know you're still like the city, we're reinventing ourselves amidst this
Yes.
pandemic, but I just want to make sure and ask, have you guys considered how will you continue to accept the previous year's assets in terms of
Hmm.
annual revenues to be
Hmm.
able to allow businesses and not have to necessarily take into account the challenges that they faced in 2020?
Yes.
And I wanted to
So
make sure I get that in before you finish.
yes, 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 and I'll put a wrap on it. Um, Essentially, to your point, we are accepting applications now for businesses that will participate in January, okay, of 2021, and they'll have until October, mid-October, to submit those applications. Um, with regards to how we measure revenue attainment, it is a backwards looking
Good.
process, as you can appreciate. I guess the question is how far backwards. We rely upon tax return submissions. Okay, so at this juncture, we would be saying submit your 2019. We realize some people are on extension. So for current people now, we say we take the last, whatever tax return you submitted last, that's what we accept as the official record of your revenue attainment. Okay, certainly to your point, because we're in the midst of a pandemic now and the landscape is changing, I think moving forward, there will be some type of acknowledgement that businesses, were extraordinarily impacted during 2020. And so there may be some type of, just adjustment into terms of what their interim financials look like. I think, so as it pertains to individuals on this call now and them applying, as long as they attain or surpass the 150 for the last tax return that they've submitted, that's what we're going to look at. Okay. Certainly, we want to know how they're doing in the current, but that is not as impactful with us, giving consideration to what's going on in the general business environment. Okay. So you can move to the next slide, please. I have a few more slides. I won't try to go through them all. Um, I talked about the growth plan, which is essentially a document that you leave our program with. Okay. So although this program is housed at Miami-Dade College, you don't get any college credit. This program is really designed kind of as, the benefit is the education. Okay. And that you're working on your own business and you're going to leave with an actual document that tells you, here's what I'm going to do in my marketing. Here's what I'm going to do in my operations and so on. Okay. And that's your ticket to graduation. Next slide. And you put together that growth plan with the help of your business advisor. These are just some statistics that we've been able to amass. 66% of individuals who've gone through our program report that they've been able to grow their revenue after 6 months after graduation. 66% of those survey respondents say they've grown revenue. 46% of those survey respondents say they've been able to create at least one new job within 6 months of graduation. And something not listed here, 78% of the businesses that go through this program now do business with other businesses that they met in the program. Okay. If you're like me, you hate to make a call to a contractor that you don't know to fix your roof or to fix that plumbing issue. So by virtue of business owners meeting other business owners, sometimes they partner together and do work, or they just use others as a resource. Something we're very proud of is what you see as a 99% graduation rate. Okay. And that is very telling to me because I integrate that with the notion that there's no cost to be in this program. And everyone's so busy that they wish that there were more hours in a day. So, as you know, business owners and people in general are not inclined to spend time doing things that they view as a waste of time. Okay. As we all know, if you pay $10,000 to be in this program, you're going to show up for the sessions because you've invested something. And that's why I think this 99% graduation rate is very telling in that participants in this program participate at no cost to them. So there must be something compelling because I know that we've had individuals that show up on the first day of class and they're really not sold on it. They want to see what this is all about before they really commit. And I believe that 99% graduation rate tells you there's an abundance of takeaways from this. And I'll kind of conclude here. I'll go back based on the criteria for admission. We're talking about 150,000 in revenue, 4 employees, and 2 years in business. Some demographic information about a class that graduated in December of last year was we had about 35 business owners. Their average revenue was 1.3 million, and their average time in business was 14 years. Okay, so these aren't businesses right out of the gate. These are businesses that have been doing something right because they've been surviving, but they still feel that they found value in this program. Almost to a person, everyone says, I should have done this sooner because most business owners have been learning lessons the hard way. Okay. And typically, as you all know, when you do or make a mistake in business, there's usually money attached to it. So a lot of them had wished they had just kind of coming out of the gate gotten some more around it. And there's no educational prerequisite to be in our program. So that really runs the gamut as well. We have individuals who, are high school graduates, and then you have individuals who have contracting licenses, medical degrees, law degrees, the full gamut, but they all have to run a business. Okay. And they acknowledge most of them, obviously, they're experts at something else. If you went to law school, you profess to be an expert at law. If you're a general contractor, you build great buildings. But business owners learn the hard way that there's so much more than just baking the cookies, if you will, to running a business. Okay. So that's what this program is all about, helping people to get a broader perspective of direction. And we help you to put a plan together. So I'm going to stop there and allow the program to move forward. And I'll be here for questions. And if you go to the last slide, Paul, I do want to share my contact information, which you see there in the middle. My email address, mgray2@mdc.edu, if you'd like to reach out to me after this presentation directly. Okay. And I certainly hope that if you're a business owner and there's some parts of your business that you wish you had a better handle on, then this program may be for you. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much, Maurice. This is fantastic in the information. I love a lot of the information that you presented. And first and foremost, I want the participants to know if you have any particular questions for Mr. Gray, please submit your questions on the dashboard, and he will be responding and continue to respond to answer your questions even while our next presenter is speaking. What I love that you said is this is a wonderful opportunity, and the purpose and the primary goal of this program is to get the businesses to focus. During this COVID-19 pandemic and the downtime that we're all experiencing, especially as a business owners, as many of the counties and the cities are reclosing again because of the rising numbers, businesses are finding themselves at home. Use this time to maximize the benefit to be able to position yourself, accumulate some additional resources and knowledge and skills that can help you reacquaint yourself and position you to be able to do even more business on the other side of this COVID-19 pandemic. And so thank you, Maurice. I think in terms of identifying new business opportunities, which was something which is one of the pillars, this creates a perfect opportunity amidst the pandemic for them to be able to do that and just to explore their creative side in terms of the way that they choose to navigate their business post-COVID. Okay, we have a second presenter that's here for you, Miss Gerri Detweiler. She's an education director. Education is the platform in terms of what we're trying to really equip you and the knowledge we're trying to equip you with today to make sure that you understand that knowledge is really powerful and it really is the key ingredient that will do some of those things that you heard Mrs. Gray speak about, position a business owner to really be able to offer better services and to ensure that they develop the right team. Knowledge is the thing that does that. Ms. Detweiler is an education director for NAV, which provides business owners with simple tools to build strong business credit and to match them to financing. She's been interviewed in more than 4,000 news stories and answered over 10,000 credit questions online. Her articles have been widely syndicated, and she is the author and co author of 5 books, including Finance Your Own Business, Get on the Financing Fast Track. She has also hosted her own radio show and testified before Congress on consumer credit legislation. You will find the several benefits to her program and the things she makes available to small businesses that are going to be instrumental in businesses being able to capitalize on amid the pandemic and post COVID. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to some and reintroduce to others, present to others, Ms. Gerri Detweiler. Go ahead, Gerri, and thank you again so much for agreeing to participate us with this webinar.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Hollis, and thanks to the City of Miramar for hosting me. I had the pleasure of attending the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Summit in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago, and it was fantastic. I met so many great business owners. And so if you're not quite there at the level yet where, you could qualify to participate, I'd set that as a goal because I can tell you it was just fantastic. And the business owners who were there profited tremendously from the program. So I'm really glad Maurice was able to join and talk about 10,000 small businesses. So I want to talk about financing today. It's a challenging environment for financing, and I really want to help you understand how to navigate it. So we'll see. I don't think my slides are up quite yet. Let's go ahead and we'll get those going. But what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to first give you an overview of what's going on with financing. I'm going to talk about some of the types of financing that are available right now to small businesses, a little bit about what's going to come back in the future, and then I'm going to give some tips for how to build your business credit so you can take advantage of more financing offers. And I will have some resources in there, including NAV, but you're never obligated to use any of the services that you see to take advantage of the other educational programs that are available through the City of Miramar and through your organizations like small business development centers. All right, let's go ahead. Next slide. And this just gives there's an email there if you want to reach out to me afterwards. I know sometimes credit questions are a little personal, so you're welcome to ask them here in the webinar. I'll try to answer, but if you need to reach out to me afterwards, you can reach out to me there. As Dr. Hollis mentioned, I've written several books. My first book was about FICO scores way back in the day. It was the very first book about FICO scores. And then my most recent book is Finance Your Own Business. And I was also my own business owner for more than a decade. So I appreciate, the challenges, including leading up to that Great Recession when things were very, very difficult. So I know, and I really feel for many of the challenges that you're going through, but we want to try to help you navigate that as best as possible so you can come out, stronger. And there's some actually really compelling information from the Harvard Business School that did a study and, found that a certain percentage of small business owners coming out of the 2008 recession emerged stronger than ever. And it had a lot to do with their connections and the way they took advantage advantage of those connections to build a stronger business. So that's, that's the goal. So hopefully this is one piece of that puzzle. Let's go to the next slide. So who's lending? Next. So this is a very different world than, just beginning of January, as we all know. Pre-PPP, if I had given you a financing presentation in January, it would have talked about the fact that there's 44 different lending types of financing for small businesses, over 6,000 lenders across the country offering financing products, many range of products, all the way from startups to established businesses, online, traditional financing, etc. And then around the second week in March, it was just like a freight train putting on the brakes. Everything just almost slowed to a halt. And at NAV, we are a marketplace that works with over 110 different financing sources around the country. So we felt this firsthand in our own business, seeing how the lenders were just saying, hey, we're not lending, we're stopping until we can get a handle on what's going on. And that's changing now. And I'm going to update you on that. But, it was a very dramatic shift. Now, the good news is that in mid-March, we started to see these programs come out for small businesses. So it started with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. I call it EIDL for short, which is a loan through the SBA. Most SBA loans come from lenders, not from the SBA. The SBA guarantees them. But in this case, the disaster loans, the EIDL, they make the loan themselves. And that's a low interest loan, 3.75% with a 30-year repayment term. And then you have PPP, and PPP falls under the most popular SBA program, 7A. And that one is 2.5 times average monthly payroll. And it can be completely forgiven if you spend the funds the proper way. And as Dr. Hollis mentioned, they have extended that program through August 8th. And so you still have time to apply. If you did not apply for PPP in one of the first 2 rounds, there are still funds currently, and that program is still available. So you may want to consider that. And then some states like Florida initially had a bridge loan program that unfortunately capped out very quickly. But, there's other things there. Every day we're seeing news of new legislation that's been introduced. So there's going to be more. This is not the total sum of everything. So keeping up to date with what's available is also really helpful too. And then crowdfunding, which I'll talk about in the financing options, that's had a real surgence for small business owners. In fact, I just read an email this morning from one of the crowdfunding platforms that I'm going to mention. They raised $500,000 in like 3 days for small businesses, or they raised that much money to lend to small businesses in those 3 days. And that was just a couple weeks ago. So it's still a very active and viable program option for you. I'm going to talk about that. So post PPP, and if you have any PPP or EIDL questions, I'm happy to try to tackle those. Written a lot about those programs, answer a lot of questions. Just go ahead and put those into the chat. So post PPP. So what we're seeing, we're in touch with lenders every single day because that's what NAV does, right? Is help match borrowers to lenders. So we're talking to them and finding out. So some of them are reopening. Some of them are opening to previous customers. So if you had a line of credit, for example, before, they may be coming back and letting you reopen that line of credit or extend your line of credit. Some of them are still lending to certain industries. So, and a good example is a lot of the medical industry still has quite a few financing options available. So it kind of depends on the industry and the type of credit you have, et cetera. We're going to talk about these qualifications, but the overall message that I want to give to you is that lenders are going to tighten up requirements. They already have done so. It's going to be a gradual reopening. So the better you can position yourself to be qualified, the better you are in terms of financing. And, it's really interesting to me in this time because I've been talking about this for about 5 years now. And, I would always say in my presentation, you want to line up financing before you need it, because whether it's a crisis or an opportunity, could be either, you want to have the financing you need available. And a lot of business owners are very debt averse. They want to bootstrap it, and I respect that 100%. But now we're seeing firsthand, like even these businesses that were doing very well and bootstrapping very well are suddenly saying, hey, the crisis has come along and I haven't positioned myself. So we saw a lot of this with PPP and EIDL where businesses just didn't have their taxes done, so they couldn't figure out the loan amount they could qualify for. They didn't have the proper business structure, or they were mixing business and personal or bank account. And all these things made it very difficult for them to access even the government program, much less, a private loan program. So I want to help you position your business and be ready. And by the way, I do talk fast because I have a lot to cover and a lot to share with you, but we have handouts. So all the steps that I'm going to outline here are going to be in the handouts that Dr. Hollis will make sure you get after the program so that you can walk. So don't feel like you have to take notes on every single word that I say. All right, next step. Now, next slide. All right, next slide, before you borrow. So here are the steps that I want you to take to build the foundation for your business if you haven't already. The most difficult question for many small business owners when it comes to borrowing is, how much do I need? And as much as I can get is not the right answer, right? You need to know. And this really came home to me recently because NAV gives a quarterly small business grant. And I've never been involved in the evaluation process for that until the last grant that we awarded. And so I was given a list of businesses to evaluate and narrow down and then interview. And the ones that made the cut were the ones who really could define how they were going to use that money. They'd say, I would use this $10,000 to buy this machine so I can increase my production by 30%. That's so clear. Others would just say, well, I'm going to use it for marketing. Well, what kind of marketing? Have you done a marketing test? Do you know how much that would bring in? This is, some of the things that Maurice just talked about that, that the Goldman Sachs program also runs you through, is really getting clear on all this. So this is most important. So if you don't feel like you could answer this question today, if you need money, then you need to make friends with your accountant or get a small business advisor who can help you. And whether that's a private small business advisor or through a free program like the Small Business Development Centers or a SCORE mentor. Those are free services for business owners in partnership with the SBA. You need someone who can help you figure out those numbers so you can be successful. All right, next slide. And then you need to know about your time in business. This is very important because most lenders traditionally want to see 2 years of time in business, especially traditional lenders like banks. Some are more flexible and they will lend to newer businesses, including startups, but we're seeing this requirement really becoming very important right now. And I will add a tip. If you're operating as a sole proprietor, and you haven't incorporated, then you might not have an official start business day. You just started selling. You started doing whatever it is you do and you started selling. You want to at least make sure you get the proper business licenses and you file a fictitious name with the state doing business as. So that gets you on record with the name of your business and you can use that as your official start date. Or you could also request an employer identification number, EIN, which is sort of like your social security number for your business from the IRS. And you could use that as your start date, but write down that start date and use it when you apply for credit, do anything else. You want an official, clear start date so you can get that 2 years in business. Go to the next slide. All right, what are your revenues? So revenues are increasingly important. Lenders want to see revenues, and yes, they're declining right now. But one of the things that we see it now from people who want to apply for financing is, we have both a fully digital experience where you can just apply online, or you can talk to someone on our staff, and people will say, well, "What's your revenues?" And people always pick the best month, right? Like the best month of the last year. And that's not what you need to know. You need to know your average monthly revenues for the last 6 months. So, and you need to make sure your accounting is up to date so you can provide this information. Now, some lenders will ask to tie to your bank account so they can actually just load the information from your bank account. That's in a read-only environment usually. So that means they can't take money out of your bank account, but they're just using to analyze your revenues. So you want to avoid bounce checks. You want to avoid very low balance days. I know it's tough right now. If you can park a little bit of money, even from your personal savings in there, just to keep that balance there, that's great. Do the best you can, but that's going to be important. Next slide. You're also going to need a business bank account. And about 1 in 5 small business owners do not use a separate business bank account. And I got a lot of comments about this for people who were trying to get the EIDL loan or were being told by the SBA they needed a business bank account. Now, you don't actually. I think there's been some misinformation there. You can do it with a personal bank account. but they wanted you to have a business bank account. And it's much better if you do. I had so many people who had questions like, I pay my home mortgage out of my business bank account. How do I account for that? Or I don't really take a salary. I just take money out of my account whenever I want it, or I just use it for expenses. You want a separate business bank account that you use just for business expenses. If you need money out of that account, then you write yourself a check as the owner of the business, and then you pay your personal expenses out of your personal account. Just please do not keep commingling funds. It's really bad for when you're trying to get financing. Next, and it's also harder at tax time. Credit scores. So your personal credit scores and or your business credit scores can come into play. This is research from the Federal Reserve that came out last year. They survey small business owners around the country, and just over half of small business owners used a combination of personal and business credit or just business credit to get financing for their business, and the rest just use personal credit. So here's what you should expect. If you are a business owner with 20% or more ownership in a business, you should be prepared for a personal credit check. It happened with Idle. A few lenders do it with PPP, and with other loans, it may be a soft credit check where it doesn't affect your credit scores, maybe a hard credit check, but you should be prepared. If you have a business partner and the two of you have not talked about your credit, you need to do that because you can't hide a business partner's credit. A bank is going to require, if someone owns 20% or more, they're going to check that personal credit. And if it's bad, even if it's your business partners, you can't just say, well, mine is good. They're going to take that into account. So you need to make sure that you're aware of that and you're checking both. And we'll talk about how to check and build business credit a little bit later in the program as well. Next. What is my industry? So your industry is classified by using government codes that were developed for government contracting. The Standard Industrial Classification, or SIC code, is the first one. That one is the older version. The newer one, which is expanded, is the NAICS, or North American Industrial Classification System. These, if you go to incorporate your business, you'll put this on your incorporation papers. If not, it may show up, it may get assigned by the credit bureau, but they often show up on your credit file. It's very important that this is accurate. And we have found at NAV that many business owners find incorrect NAICS or SIC codes on their business credit. And this is important because you might get screened for a loan and you never even know that you might have qualified because they're looking for businesses in certain industries or excluding some industries. And I'll give you a real life example real quick. We had a customer at NAV who manufactured yard signs for real estate companies. So the business was manufacturing signs, but got classified as a NAICS code that it was a real estate business. And the three highest risk businesses are real estate, restaurants, and retail. And so this business was having trouble qualifying for financing because of the incorrect NAICS code. Once they fixed it, they got more financing. So when you check your business credit, make sure this is accurate. And if you're incorporating for the first time, these are both available online for free, government databases to check. Spend a little time. It's a little wonky for some businesses. I realize it's a little tricky at first, but spend some time and figure out the one that makes most sense to you. Next slide. And make sure it's accurate. Collateral. So a lot of us, when we think of collateral, we think of physical collateral, like, this piece of machinery, but it could also be things like your receivables or your all inventory, etc. So if you get an EIDL loan, for example, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and it's $25,000 or more, the SBA takes an interest in all collateral. They file a UCC filing, and let's look at that at the next slide. Go ahead. They place something called a UCC filing. And what this is this is a notice that's filed under the Uniform Commercial Code at a courthouse. And it says to everyone, hey, we have interest in the property of this business. And if they don't pay, we have first dibs on this collateral. And you'll see the UCC filing for the EIDL loan is pretty broad. It's a UCC 1. And you can look at the contract. It's taken interest in a lot of different, property of the business. So one thing we find at NAV is that sometimes the lenders will place these UCC filings, but they won't release them. And so then another lender comes along and they want to make a loan, but they say, hey, everything's tied up. This lender has tied up everything. So when you're reading a loan contract, you want to look at what the collateral is, and you want to look at what you're giving up and what you're tying up and determine whether that makes sense or whether it might preclude you from other financing opportunities in the future. Next. All right, so knowing your numbers is very important. I'm not going to give an accounting lecture. I will say accounting is my least favorite part of owning my business. So just like Maurice mentioned, most business owners don't get into this because they love accounting and numbers and all that stuff and management. And I didn't like it either, but it's so important because having this data available is going to be sometimes make or break the difference between getting a loan or not. And the example I'll go back to is Idle, where you needed to, even if you didn't file your 2019 tax returns, you needed to know what was on line 31, the net profit from your business for 2019 on Schedule C in order to apply as a sole proprietor independent contractor. So you have to develop a system to make sure you're up on top of your numbers. And if you have an account that you work with, or if you work with a software program to do your business accounting, becoming familiar with how to run these reports is really key. One of our grant winners at NAV, she's a creative. She started a candle business with $200 out of her house 4 years ago, and now she has like 40 employees making candles. But every week she runs her financial statements. So she knows what's going on in her business. And that's so key to being successful in a small business. So make sure you get that expertise. Next slide. And then of these, I would say the most critical right now are going to be revenues. So a lot of lenders are looking at revenues right now to make decisions. Time and business, again, they're extending time limits. Credit scores, business and personal, can be important. And then the industry that you're in is going to make a difference in terms of whether you are targeted or offered financing or even approved for financing. All right, so let's talk about some of the lending options that may be available to you. I'm going to kind of go through this quickly because of time. So we'll go to the next slide. Let's talk about financing now. So we'll talk about first about the most traditional types of financing. You can go to the next slide. And this is the type of financing that most of us think about when we think about a small business loan. We think about getting a loan from a bank or a credit union, right? And if you can do that, that's ideal. That is the gold mine when it comes to small business financing, because the terms are usually attractive, they're very favorable, they don't have a lot of hidden surprises or confusion, etc. But research by the Fed shows that about 70% of small businesses don't qualify for traditional financing. So we're going to also talk about some alternatives. But if you are looking at this, then you're looking at a line of credit, which could be, it's like a credit card. You get a credit limit, you spend what you need, you pay it back based on what you owe, and then you can go back and get more financing. And that's attractive because you only pay interest on what you've actually borrowed. The rest is just sitting there available to you. Term loans are fixed rate or fixed loans. So it's a fixed amount of money, say $100,000 for a fixed period of time, say 2 years. You know what the payment's going to be. The interest rate might be variable, so it might change things a little bit. But for the most part, these are pretty, this is, you need that $100,000 to do X. And so you're going to borrow that and then pay it back over a period of time. Now, SBA loans, that's just a big bucket. There's a number of different SBA loans. I've written an SBA loan e-guide that has all the different types out there. And the economic injury disaster loan fell under the SBA bucket, and so did PPP. Now, traditionally, the SBA, except for disaster loans, does not make loans. It guarantees them. So a financial institution makes the loan, and then the SBA guarantee is there in case the borrower defaults. So the SBA has guidelines, and they are detailed. I mean, I've looked at the standard operating procedures. They can be 50 pages long for one type of loan that they have to follow because they don't want taxpayers to end up on the hook, right, for that loan. But as long as the bank or financial institution meets those guidelines, then they can add additional requirements. They just can't discriminate on a prohibited basis. So the important part for you is to understand is that if you go to get an SBA loan and the bank says no, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't get an SBA loan. Maybe you're just not a fit for their program, what they're doing. Maybe your industry, maybe your time in business. It could be any variety of things that they could decide. But there may be another lender who may offer you an SBA loan. So don't get completely discouraged if your first answer is not a yes. And again, there's so many programs, but one of them, the 7A program, that's the main program. It's the one that PPP falls under. I'll give you a quick tip. If you are well qualified and you can qualify for one of these SBA 7A loans, the SBA is making your payments for 6 months. So you actually save that amount of money. So if you get it by September 30th, I think it is of this year, the SBA makes your first 6 months of payments and interest. That's the principal and interest. So if you have the qualifications, I would say definitely you want to look into it right now because there's never been a time where the SBA has done that like that. So that's a really good opportunity. And then commercial real estate loans, those are getting tougher. I'm not going to lie. There's so many problems with so many tenants paying their bills right now, paying their rent. I just saw a statistic yesterday from someone who surveyed lenders who said 60 to 65% have cut back on their construction financing. But there are some SBA programs that are available as long as you have 51% owner occupancy. The 504 CDC loan is a really good program for that. So, just again, you may have to cast a wider net than you did in the past in order to find the right opportunity. Next slide. So to qualify for this type of financing, you will need good qualifications. Banks rarely invest in startups. It's just not their thing. They try to make risk-based lending decisions. There are times when you have a serial entrepreneur who has a good track record, they have enough skin in the game, they have good credit, or maybe they pledge home equity. But for the most part, traditional lenders want to see that your business has a track record. So that means at least 2, possibly 3 years in business, strong credit, good financials, and they often want to make larger loans. So while $100,000 may seem like a lot to you, it may not seem like much to the bank because they have a lot of compliance costs in underwriting these loans. So don't be offended if they say to you, you know what, our minimum loan size is 250,000 or even 500,000. It just depends on the financial institution. You do want to talk to credit unions and community banks as well as big banks because sometimes they are more flexible and work with members of their community. All right, next. And SBA loans, we touched on that. There is a free e-guide. If you want it, I'll be happy to send it. I don't think I sent it to Dr. Hollis, but I'll send it to you. So if anybody wants it, you can absolutely get that, or you can email me directly, but that's also an option. We'll touch on a couple of these in a moment. All right, next slide. I want to make sure I can get through all this. Okay, FICO SBSS. This is a credit score created by FICO just for small business. What's unique is it can take into account the business credit of the business, that data, as well as the personal credit of the owners, and up to 5 owners. Remember, 20% or more ownership. They can pull in the personal credit and add that. They can even add in financial data. So with this score, this is a mandatory pre-screen for loans in the 7A SBA program. FICO says that about 7,000 lenders, mostly traditional lenders like bank type lenders, around the country use this score in lending decisions. So the best score is 300, the lowest is 0, and you need a 140 according to the SBA. Most lenders want to see 160 or 165 or above. So we'll talk a little about, I know all of you are probably cognizant of your personal credit no matter where it stands, but you probably haven't checked your business credit. So we'll talk about that and how you can build business credit to help you get a stronger FICO SBSS score. All right, next slide. Okay, so where do you apply? Don't worry, Paul, that's fine. You can leave it like that. So where do you apply? You can go to a bank or credit union, community banks. The SBA has a lender match service for SBA loans, and then NAV also matches borrowers to loans, including the SBA loans. So there's a variety of places you can look for your next small business financing. But again, many business owners aren't qualified or ready or in the right position for traditional financing. So I want to touch on the alternative financing so that you're aware of it because you will be offered it. If you have a business name and a business address, even if it's your home address, you will get offers. So we want to make sure you understand these offers so you can make a good decision. Next. And the first one, well, here's some credit flexible options, and some of these are available to startups as well. So I'm going to go into these options and just explain what they are in just a moment. Next. So merchant cash advances, this is for any business that takes a lot of sales through credit cards or debit cards. So if you have any kind of business that sees a lot of retail sales and people are swiping a card, you will get offered these, I promise. And what it does, they don't call it a loan. They say it's an advance. What they do is they look at how much your sales have been in the past and they advance you on future sales. So they're saying, okay, you had 50,000 in sales last month. We're going to advance you, I don't know, 30,000. And once you get it, you basically pay the cost of that immediately. So it's not like a loan or line of credit where you're paying for whatever you borrowed. Like you get the 30,000 in your bank account, and then you have the costs associated with it right away. And then they take the repayment out of future sales. So the next time one of your customers swipes their card, they get a little percentage. And until it's repaid, until the amount you were advanced was repaid. And so this can traditionally be a very expensive form of financing, but they don't care that much about your credit. They care about your revenues, right? So they're looking at how much were your sales. Now, one advantage that could be beneficial, especially I say, especially somewhere like Florida, where no matter what, we have seasonal businesses, right? Many of our businesses are very seasonal. When your sales are lower, the percentage that you repay may be lower if it's tied to the number of sales. So if there's no sales, no payments. So that could be an advantage, but I do want you to understand the cost. Let's go ahead to the next one. So they express cost as a factor rate. So here's one thing to understand about small business financing. And this is, if you don't take anything else away from what I told you today, remember this. Small business lenders do not have to tell you an APR. It is not required. So they often use terminology that may sound like an interest rate, sound like an APR, but it's not. And unless you really figure out what the APR is, you may be paying a lot more than you think. So here's an example of a factor rate on an MCA for 1.2. So you get $100 and they say 1.2, so they multiply that $100 by 1.2, and that means you have to pay back $120. Remember, the minute you sign the paperwork, you owe $120, right? Doesn't matter how fast or how slow it takes you to pay it back. And that I put it into one of our free calculators at NAV, and we have a bunch of these calculators. Just go to nav.com/calculator. You don't need a NAV account. You don't need to sign up, share any personal information, but you can just see the cost. And this was an APR of 38%. Now, that's actually not that bad for this type of financing. There was a study by the Opportunity Finance Network where they had business owners who were coming in trying to get out of very high cost financing, and the average APR for these business owners, take a guess in your head, the average APR was 94%. 94%. So you have to be careful and understand these costs. Go ahead to the next slide. So here's an example from PayPal. So if you are a PayPal, if you sell on PayPal or you sell on Amazon, you will get offered financing. I promise you. I know because I still have my corporation and I get PayPal offers every week. And they don't list an APR. They list a fixed look. If you look at the bottom line on the left-hand slide, it says there's the fee. They name it as a fee. So you don't know what the interest rate is, right? So I used one of our calculators. Just take an example from their website, plug it in, and there's the APR. It's 25.6%. And I've seen it vary. I've seen 30%. Now that may be the best financing you can get right now. I don't, I'm not going to make a judgment call, but I want you to know what it is so you can make an informed decision, because maybe you have a credit card that has 0% for 18 months, or maybe you have a credit card that is 16%, and that's still half of, what you're getting offered elsewhere. Maybe not, but I want you to be informed and aware so those calculators can help you do that. All right, next slide. Oh, and Amazon has a new product, by the way, backed by Goldman Sachs, Marcus, and for small business owners. And that one, I think they're going to disclose an interest rate. So I don't know a lot about it yet because it's new, but that one is going to come out with Amazon. Amazon has had more of the traditional PayPal type style financing in the past. All right, invoice factoring. This is where your business is owed invoices and you need the money faster. So I used to do consulting to financial institutions, and they expect me to pay my credit card to them in 30 days, but then they take me 3 or 4 months sometimes to pay for the services I had provided. So what these companies will do is they will advance you money on the invoice, they will collect it, and then they'll get a percentage of it. Some of them will use invoices to sort of be like collateral for your loan, and you'll just collect it directly, but they really like to be in control. And they like to deal with businesses that are doing business with companies that are low risk, right? So your credit rating isn't the biggest factor here. It's the credit rating of the business that you're doing business with that they care the most about. So I was at a conference where I met a gentleman whose business is factoring invoices for companies that do business with Coca-Cola. So he knows Coca-Cola is a good risk, right? They're going to pay their bills, but aren't going to pay quickly. Any big company you do business with, they're not going to pay quickly. So he would advance those, and then he would get a little percentage, and the businesses would get the money faster, etc. So this is something to keep in mind. Now, there are companies too that will have try to move to more of an online type of model. Next slide. Um, Bluevine, for example, they have set it up so they actually give you a bank account number and a mailing address that they have access to. So when that check comes in from the client, you've assigned the right for them to cash that check, and then they pay you out of that. So your client doesn't have to know that you're factoring the invoice, basically. So for people who are a little bit worried their client might think they're not, it's invoice factoring is very common, so I wouldn't worry about it too much, especially if you do business with a big company. But some people feel uncomfortable with that, so this is a simpler way for them to go about that. And the interest rates, effectively could be pretty high. So again, that's where the calculators can be very helpful. All right, next slide. Microloans. So if you're a startup or you're a business that doesn't need a huge amount of money, usually $50,000 or less, a microloan can be a good option for you. There's a couple of ways to find microloans. One microloan option I want to point out is Kiva, KIVA.org. They also sort of fall under the crowdfunding platform, but they are 0%, zero fees. And it's up to $15,000. And they have a deferment of your first 6 months of payments right now for COVID related businesses in the US or businesses impacted by COVID. And they're the ones who just raised $500,000 to fund small businesses. I'm a lender on Kiva. And lenders on Kiva are just doing it basically because they want to support small business. It's just a philanthropic thing to do. They don't make any money off of it, but it's just trying to help small business. So you may have customers who really want to help you in this time and they don't know how. And something like Kiva, where they can pitch in $25 to your campaign, may be an excellent option. Then you do repay it. And once you repay it, those funds become available to lend to other small businesses. So it's a really virtuous cycle there. Other microloan programs are available usually through economic development organizations and nonprofits like community development financial institutions. So certainly I'm sure Dr. Hollis has some resources that she can share. Many small business development centers are familiar with what's going on in their community. And then the Opportunity Finance Network, ofn.org, they have a list of participating members who make microloans, and that may be another resource for you as well. But these organizations are trying to help disadvantaged businesses. So they often offer attractive terms and are more flexible on credit and other qualifications. Their goal is usually to help create jobs in their community. Next. And then vendor terms. So if you haven't, yes, go ahead in the next slide. If you haven't read the book Pancakes in Paris, I really enjoyed it. It's a true story of Craig Carlson, who started the first all-day breakfast diner, American breakfast diner in Paris about 10 years ago. Really good story, lots of good business lessons in it. And one of the ways that he discovered that, the only reason he got over to Paris and he had raised money and he was doing everything he could, and then he got ripped off on a space and he found the trademark was much more expensive and blah, 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 usual, startup stories. And then the only reason he was able to open it is because his vendors, the companies that supplied the bacon and the coffee and the eggs and everything else, let him get that for and wine, because in Paris you need wine at a breakfast diner. And they let him buy it on net 30 terms. So he was able to buy it, sell the meal, and then pay for it later. And that's how he survived. And many small businesses in America do the very same thing. That's how they improve their cash flow. And vendors, you can go to the next slide. Vendors are not usually very as concerned about your credit. They really want you to be locked in to buy their product, right? So they don't want to make a bad decision. They'll probably check business credit to see if there's red flags on it, but they're usually trying to lock you in as in a relationship. And so they may offer you net 10 terms, which means you have 10 days to pay, or net 30 to start. And then as you pay on time and your business does well, you can get longer terms. It's usually low cost. They rarely charge interest. If they do, it might be, 1%, 2% a month, or you might give up a discount. You get a discount if you pay in full upfront, but you pay a little bit interest if you don't. So there's a link there to some vendors that are very easy to get started with. They don't check personal credit. They can help you build business credit at nav.com/vendors. That may be one place for you to start building some vendor relationships for things you normally buy in your business anyway. All right, next slide. All right, retirement loans. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but a lot of people do use retirement funds. Just be careful, especially with something called the ROBS plan. It's a rollover business startups. This is where you roll over your retirement money into a separate account and then you use that to pay business expenses. And the IRS did a study a few years back and found that most businesses who did this were not successful. And if you don't follow the terms exactly of the IRS guidelines, you will owe taxes and penalties. So you have an even more expensive, form of financing. So just be careful. Just if you're going to use retirement funds, really investigate this very, very carefully. All right, next slide. Okay, and crowdfunding. All right, so why don't you use the Q&A? Anyone know what the top 4 types of crowdfunding are? And Dr. Hollis says answers come in. I'll let you go ahead and share any answers that come in. And I'll tell a really quick story. You see the bag there of Cowboy Cricket Farms. I got to give an award to this small business. They're a young veteran-owned business in Montana. And in something like 5 years, they became the #1 producer of food-grade crickets in America, North America. Really cool business. And they produce flavored cricket snacks, as well as cricket flour and chocolate chirp cookies made out of cricket flour. And so they had a crowdfunding campaign, and I donated $25 to their campaign. And they fulfilled their campaign. So they sent everyone who participated a bag of each of the new flavors plus a chocolate chip cookie. So I got to try the wasabi flavored cricket snacks, and surprisingly delicious. But anyway, it's kind of a fun example of a crowdfunding campaign. Do we have any guesses yet on any crowdfunding?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All
And I
right.
don't think anyone wants to try that cricket flour either.
It's delicious. It's delicious.
If you say so.
And very environmentally friendly, I will add, high source of protein. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So the 4 main types of crowdfunding. I really want you to consider this if you have any kind of audience and a way to connect with them, because people want to support small businesses right now. And if you can give them a specific way to do that, that can be helpful. So rewards-based crowdfunding is like the one I just mentioned, Cowboy Crickets. They did it through Kickstarter. Indiegogo is another popular platform. There's some other reward-based platforms. And basically, you give something. So it could be a gift certificate. It could be a new flavor of your product. It could be a beta version of your product. It could be, for an artist, it could be a private concert. I guess it had to be virtually right now. There's all kinds of different ways that they can reward you for being a backer in their campaign. I just found out that one of the largest campaigns, I gave my nieces Exploding Kittens, the little game Exploding Kittens for, I found out it was one of the largest Kickstarter campaigns. They raised like $9 million to launch that game. So, it's all kinds of creative things you can do with that. Debt-based crowdfunding is like Kiva. That's where you pay it back over time. And so that's another option. Equity based is where you get investors. So you're actually giving people equity in your company. And while that's been popular with high tech, medical, those kinds of businesses, more recently, there have been some really surprising statistics on equity based crowdfunding for restaurants. So that's another interesting twist. And then donor-based crowdfunding is like GoFundMe. And traditionally, GoFundMe hasn't been big for small business, but it has been in the past 3 months. So GoFundMe has a matching campaign. They have, Kiva has some matching funds available too, but they had a matching campaign. They've done a lot of campaigns for small business owners who are looking for donations. Next slide. But the key to crowdfunding is you have to have a way to reach your audience. So whether it's an email list or a social media, following, you need to be able to reach the people who want to support you. So this has been a huge lesson this year that businesses that have not invested in a way to contact their customers, I don't care what type of business you are, if you have not invested that, you must do that going forward, because it's going to open up all these other opportunities for you. If something, again, crisis or opportunity comes along, that you will have the financing available to you. So look into crowdfunding if you have a way to reach your audience. Okay, next slide.
We do have a question for you
Yes.
from our CFO on that, and you can answer it at the conclusion. She said, Miss Jerry, does a crowdfunding lending provide a lower interest rate or a higher interest rate than the traditional lenders?
That's a great question. So it depends. You can't get any better than Kiva's 0%, right? That's the best one out there. But there are a few other lending crowdfunding platforms, and a lot of times they're based on your credit score. So it'll be risk-based pricing. So an 8 to 15% interest rate would be a typical range that you would see for a crowdfunding campaign. Besides that, the Kiva nonprofit model. All right, so let's touch real quick on how to build business credit because both are important. I want you to have strong personal credit and strong business credit as much as possible. I understand that this is a tough time. Some people are going to see it, hits to their personal credit. So here's the good news. You can build business credit even if your personal credit is not good. You can be on both tracks at the same time. And so it just extends your opportunities and gives you more opportunities for your business. Neither is a panacea for the other, right? But if you work on both, then you have the most opportunities available to you. Next slide. All right. So,
And
and we
Jerry,
have,
before
yes,
before you go
go
on, I
ahead.
really appreciate you keep mentioning the Kiva City. I want you to
Mhm.
know I've been doing research for the last couple of months because what they're called the latest trend is to have an actual Kiva City. And that's
Oh,
definitely a
great.
proposal I'm going to be submitting to the city to consider so that we can, because a lot of the small businesses don't know, and it's especially now they're doing various platforms
Mhm.
amid COVID, that's where resources and small businesses are depositing. And when they pay their loan, the payment from those loans are then being used to help other small businesses that need help. They're able
Mhm.
to, because with the diversity study, which is what gave rise to my program, there are a lot of barriers that are in place. And definitely credit is a huge barrier for a lot of minority businesses and disadvantaged businesses. And the Kiva, if you have a Kiva city throughout the entire city and all of the businesses that become vendor within the city of Miramar and are housed within the city of Miramar will be able to take advantage of that. So I am familiar with the Kiva city, and it's something that's just a new wave, just like most people don't know what NAV is. And
Mhm.
I'm trying to do through these measures to introduce them to something other than SCORE and SBA. There's so many
Mhm.
other resources that our businesses are just clueless to. And so Kiva City is definitely one of those that I'm looking into. So I love that you're mentioning it,
Oh,
but I want
good.
the businesses to know that don't worry, they have the city of Miramar and we're trying to remain as innovative as we can. And we're definitely looking into that as a future concept. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Sorry
well,
to
I
interrupt.
can already tell your energy has been fantastic and your passion for small business. And you can still go to kiva.org right now, even until you get the city set up. So it's still an option right now. So let's talk about business credit real quick. It's such a mystery to business owners. 72% of business owners have never seen their business credit. I think you're going to be shocked with some of the statistics I'm going to tell you in just a moment, but it is a factor in many decisions. Insurance, getting bonded, government contracts, they will require a DUNS number, and which I'll explain in a minute, and they may also check your business credit. Financing options may check business credit. I was on a webinar with a woman with accountants, and one of the accountants reached out to me afterwards, and she said, "I used to work in the supplier department at Walmart, and we pulled business credit on all our suppliers before we would do business with them, and most of them had no clue." So it's very common that business owners don't know this exists. So I want you to be able to position your business for success. All right, next slide. And the good news is, I will tell you that if you do what I'm telling you today, you will be in a better position than most businesses because most aren't doing anything, right? They don't know, they aren't checking, they aren't building it, they aren't working on it. So you're already ahead of the game. I've seen credit scores go up very quickly on business credit. All right, so out of these here, let's see if we get any guesses. Which of these credit bureaus employed four former U.S. presidents? Which of these credit bureaus employed four former U.S. presidents? And I'll give extra credit for someone who might name a very famous president who worked for one of these bureaus. Any guesses? Let me know if we get any guesses. Normally, I would give away a book, but our NAV office is closed and I can't get to them. So remind me, I do have a link if you want to get a free copy of my book, Finance Your Own Business. I'll throw that into the Q&A at the end. Anyone want to take a guess?
I've got no takers so
No.
far.
Oh, okay. Well,
A
okay. Well,
couple of
let me
people
give you a
thanking
clue.
you for the presentation and saying that the information is very valuable, but no
Okay.
takers on this one.
All
Go
right. Well,
ahead.
Dun and Bradstreet employed 4 former U.S. presidents, including one famous, iconic president who is often pictured wearing a tall hat. Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln worked for Dun and Bradstreet. Okay, they've been around since the 1850s. They've been around forever, and yet most business owners, I would guess, I don't know if any of you checked your Dun and Bradstreet. If you have, put it in the comments and let us know. Most of you probably haven't because you just don't. There's no federal law that requires they disclose it. Anyone can check it. There's no disclosure if you're turned down based on this information. Your competitors can pull your business credit. So just understand this is much more widely used than you probably realize, and you're not aware of it. So let's go to the next slide. The 3 major business credit bureaus are Equifax, Experian, and Dun and Bradstreet. So Equifax, Experian, and Dun and Bradstreet. And these databases are completely separate from personal credit. So yes, you have Equifax that does personal credit too, but they don't mix the 2 databases. Same with Experian. They don't mix them. They can analyze data from both, like with that FICO score we talked about, where they can pull personal credit data and business credit data and put it into one score, but they're separate databases. All right, next slide. So business credit reports are similar to personal credit reports, and they contain information about how to pay your bills. So that's basically what it's trying to do, or how you have paid your bills. So it's basically a report of how your business has handled its commercial financial obligations. Next slide. But there are some major differences, and I want you to understand this before you get your business credit, because you're going to get your business credit and you're going to be completely shocked or flummoxed or frustrated because it's so different. It's such a different experience than it is with personal credit, because personal credit is very regulated. We have a very strong federal law. We have state laws. We have an organization that's their trade association that standardizes all the information in the reports. It's very, very regulated. Business credit is not. So it's not standardized. All right, next slide. So one of the first things you'll notice when you get your business credit, if you have a business credit report, if you don't, we can help you build one. But you'll see they don't list the names of creditors. So your personal credit tells you have a mortgage through, Bank of America, or you have a mortgage through Cross River Bank. But with your business credit, it just lists the type of account, like a communications account, like maybe that's your Comcast or Xfinity account, right? But it doesn't tell you who it is. So that's the first thing. Second thing, next slide. You're also going to notice that they don't list a credit limit for any accounts. So they might list the most recent balance, but no credit limits. Next slide. You'll also find that they don't break down your payment history month by month. So with your personal credit, it's a month by month grid. So if you were late in January of 2011, it would say you were late in January 2011, right? Say you're 30, 60, or 90 days late. With business credit, it's just percentage paid on time. So again, you have to be more of a detective if you're trying to figure out, oh, it says I'm late. When was I late? Next slide. And then the next thing is there's no free credit reports required. So there's no requirement of disclosure. There's no requirement. They tell you, we got your business credit report from this agency. Here's how to get a free copy, blah, 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 et cetera. So it's just a very, very different experience. All right, next slide. So what's a good business credit score then? You're welcome to make a guess if you want, but since we didn't get a guess on the DMB, I think I'm going to, in interest of time, keep going. So the next slide, it really depends on the score that's being showed. So we can go to the next slide. Each bureau has its own score range. So in the case of Experian, 0 to 100, 80 to 100 is great. Dun & Bradstreet has several different credit scores, but Paydex is the most widely known one. 0 to 100, 80 to 100 is the strongest score. Equifax has a variety. The one that we show at NAV is the delinquency score, and that's the score range for that. So my tip is, if you're checking your business credit, you're looking at a business credit score, just get an idea of what the score range is. We at NAV on free accounts give a letter grade. So, if you're in a B, great. But if you want to try to get to an A, that's even better. But even at a B, you're doing very well because most business owners just aren't doing that much. Next slide to build their business credit.
Jerry,
Yes.
I will let you know that our CFO is
Mhm.
answering all of the answers correctly,
Mm.
but she's exempt. I'm
All
trying to
right.
get the other participants. She gave you the Lincoln answer. She said the 100 credit score. She's on top of everything. And
That's
she
excellent.
is, in fact, an expert.
Okay.
So she's exempt, Miss Susan, but she is responding and giving all of the correct answers. I want the other participants to chime in. I'm getting your other feedback that you're enjoying the program, but see if you can take a guess at some of the answers. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Jerry.
And that's good because that means you have expert resources. So we already talked about FICO SBSS, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Just again, strong business credit can help you get a stronger FICO SBSS score. Next slide. But you also can get a pretty good business credit score with just a strong personal credit scores. I'm sorry, a good FICO SBSS score with really strong personal credit. All right, next slide. I think that one's out of place. Sorry. So how do you do this? So how do you build business credit? The first thing I do recommend you do is create a business entity. By the way, we have a handout for this. So I've mentioned this before. We have a build business credit checklist that's going to walk you through these steps. So if I'm going too fast for you, you don't want to take copious notes, you will get the handout. Create a business entity. You can build business credit as a sole proprietor, but the big but is until you have a business entity, you and your business are one. There's no legal separation between you and your business until you form a legal entity, LLC, S corp, C corp, et cetera, right? So I highly recommend you go ahead and do that as soon as practical. If you don't, then at least file a fictitious name, a doing business as. In Florida, it costs what, $50 to file your DBA? And that lasts, I think, for 3 years. And then you could also go ahead and, well, you want to go ahead and make sure you get any required business licenses. So that's also important. But that gives you that official, business start date and official business, and you just look more official to lenders as well. I will tell you, some of our lenders will not lend to sole proprietors. So you just want to be careful. All right, next slide. And then you want to make sure you separate your business and personal finance. You already touched on this, but get that business bank account, use it strictly for business purchases. You will thank me and yourself so many times when you go to do your bookkeeping or even turn in your tax receipts. Your accountant will thank us because you have that fully separated. You can even get a business credit card to separate further. We'll talk about that in a second. All right, next step. Request a DUNS number. So I get the question, is my EIN, my employer identification number, is that the identifier in business credit the way your social security number is used in personal credit, right? Which makes sense, but the answer is no. Each of the bureaus assigns its own identifier for your business in its data system. So for Dun & Bradstreet, it's the DUNS number. For Experian, they do their own Experian BIN, business identification number. Equifax uses something called Equifax ID. The only one that you must request proactively if you don't have one is the DUNS number. And the reason it's so well known is because it's required for government contracts and government grants. So if you were going to right now go apply for a government contract or a government grant, you would have to get a DUNS number first. They are going to change it to a new number called the SAMI number. We don't have a date for that yet, but for right now, this is really important. So two ways to check this. You can either go to Dun & Bradstreet's website and just type in your business name and zip code, see if you're in their system, or if you get a free nav account, we'll prompt you to enter your business name and we'll tell you if you have a business credit report through Dun & Bradstreet. So there's two ways to check that. All right, next one. All right, then get vendors that report. So with personal credit, if you get a mortgage, car loan, credit card, whatever, it's almost always going to show up on all three credit bureaus, right? On Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. That's just a given. With business credit, it is much less consistent. So you might have a company that reports to Dun & Bradstreet, or one that only reports negative to Experian, or one that reports to all three. That isn't as common, but it does happen. So you have to be proactive. The biggest thing we see at NAV is businesses. Sometimes they've been in business for 10 years. They come in and they have no business credit. because they're not doing business with any companies that report to business credit agencies. So that link, nav.com/vendors that I gave you earlier, these are vendors that report to business credit. So they don't check your personal credit, they report to business credit. So you can use them to start building your business credit rating. And again, I've seen really remarkable results in a short period of time just by taking these few steps. Just buy things your business would use anyway. Don't want to spend money you don't need to spend, but things your business would use anyway. You can even get the Keurig cups for your office, for your coffee machine. That can be something you can get through one of these vendors, or copy paper, or janitorial supplies, etc. All right, next slide. And then you want to also consider a business credit card, because we'll go back one to the business credit cards, step 5, because many of these business credit cards report to business credit. So you see a short link there, and it's also in the e-guide that you'll get. This is a list of the small business credit cards and who they report to. So many of them do report to business credit agencies, and some of them don't report to personal credit unless you don't pay them. So that could be an advantage too, because right now, while cash flow is tight, you could make a purchase on that credit card, pay it off over time. And if it wasn't on a personal credit, it won't hurt your personal credit scores. So I'll give you a quick example. I was in a workshop where an SBDC advisor told me one of his clients, she had some financing fall through at the last minute. So she maxed out her personal credit cards to get financing. Her business was successful. A year later, she was able to refinance with an SBA loan. She paid everything on time. But her credit scores dropped because everything was maxed out. She refinanced, paid off those credit cards. Guess how much her credit scores improved? 125 points. 125 points by getting those balances down on those personal credit cards. So you can separate your business and personal credit by using the right business credit card. All right, next slide. And I will say the business credit card's a little bit tougher to get right now. I have to be honest with you, but we will do the best to direct you to ones that you're a fit for in the NAV, the NAV marketplace. And then you want to pay on time, because a business credit is very granular. Next slide. They don't use 30-day buckets like you see on your personal credit. They use something called DBT, days beyond terms. So if you're just a couple days late, it'll be 2 DBT. So if you have net 30 terms, you pay on day 32, you're 2 DBT. If you have net 60 terms, you pay on day 62, it's still 2 DBT, because it's 2 days after the due date. And that will show up on your business credit. So the average business across the US, at least pre-COVID, had a DBT of 11. So if you miss a payment by a couple days, it's not the end of the world. But especially when you're building business credit, create systems so you just pay those on time or early if you can, and that will help you get a stronger business credit score. Next slide. Then I really want to encourage you to check your business credit and find out if you have one, and if you do, that it's accurate. The Wall Street Journal published a research report with another firm, a consulting firm, where 20% of business owners who saw their business credit found mistakes or significant omissions of information that affected their credit. And so if ultimately, you and I are the only ones that can look at our credit reports and say it's right or it's not right. Right. I mean, they can do everything they can to try to be accurate, but ultimately you and I are the final, judge of that. And so checking your business credit is important. And then next slide. You also want to watch it for fraud, because there is an increasing amount of business fraud. There was a National Cybersecurity Alliance report that talked about the increase in fraud against businesses. Tax fraud and business identity theft are growing problems. There was a story in NBCnews.com last year about an attorney who had to shut down his practice for 30 days because he was a victim of personal and business identity theft at the same time. And it was so severe, he had to devote all his time to just trying to clear it up. So you can't freeze business credit. You can't even place a fraud alert on business credit. So you need to monitor it. So if something unusual pops up, you can investigate and try to stop it before it becomes a full-blown, problem of fraud. And you can do that, by the way, for free at NAV. All right, next slide. All right, so resource. I gave you so much information. I hope I didn't talk too fast, but I really wanted to get it all in there. So I'm going to give you a couple of resources. Again, these are optional. Next slide. But basically, NAV is like Credit Karma for small business. So we're the only site where you can see your free business and personal credit reports in one place, updated monthly. So we give you personal credit from Experian, business credit from Equifax, Experian, and Dun & Bradstreet. And then we'll give you tools to build business credit. We have something called Business Launcher, which is similar to the e-guide that you're going to get after this webinar. And then, then we use that data ultimately to help you find financing. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. It's great to have a good business credit score, lots of benefits, but ultimately it's to help you get more financing offers. So the next slide. We have a marketplace. We work with over 110 lenders across the country. We don't sell your information to those lenders to call you. So basically, we feed you the offers that are targeted to borrowers with profiles like you. And then you can investigate, you can accept those offers. And if you need to talk to someone because you really don't understand, you're not sure what's right for your business, we do have a phone staff who's happy to walk you through your options. And we even have a team that can do the full loan packaging for more, involved types of loans and help you. And that's all at no cost to you. So we get paid by lenders if we send qualified customers their way. So that's how NAB makes money. All right, next slide. And then we do have paid NAV accounts, and one time you might want to consider this is if you're trying to build business credit, because the Business Boost paid account reports your payment each month to Dun& Bradstreet, Equifax, and Experian. And there's never anything negative. If you decide you don't want a paid account, you can downgrade back to a free account, and we'll just stop reporting. And the information that's on there will stay on there. But that is one way to build trade references on your business credit if you're looking to build business credit. Now, there's one more resource I want to give out that I forgot to include a slide for, but that's our quarterly small business grant. So I mentioned earlier that I was on our small business grant committee. Every quarter, we give out a $10,000 small business grant. And this quarter, the runner-up is going to be $5,000. It's one of the easiest grants to apply for. My tip is that the more specific you can be about how you use the money to solve a business challenge or to take your business to the next level, the better your chances of qualifying. But it's really a very easy grant to qualify for. And if you just go to nav.com/grant, you'll see the entry form there. And we'd love to have you participate and potentially be our grant winner. Our last grant winner was a couple in Georgia, in Atlanta, of a food truck, Shea Butter Jones. It was a lot of fun giving them the first place award. And, we're always looking for creative businesses. So that's it. I've gone a little bit over, but I really
Yes.
appreciate your time. Yeah.
Thank you, Gerri. The information is just invaluable. I mean, we cannot put a price on this information. And so I thank you so very much just to you to see our CFOs still stay on and stay involved in so many of the businesses. I wouldn't dare interrupt because during this pandemic, it is just critical for us as a city and city leaders to be able to give our local, small, minority, and disadvantaged businesses some good information that can truly empower them to be able to think of different ways of navigating through this pandemic. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much, Maurice Gray, for the information that you provided us on the Goldman Sachs amazing 10,000 Small Business Program. We're strongly encouraging businesses, again, to take advantage of that. A new class will be, they're making available as of January, and it may be virtual, which should prove even more fascinating and available to a lot of businesses. I cannot thank our participants enough. I wanted to ask you, Gerri, I learned about NOV through your little booklets that you make available. You talked about the invoice financing. Do you have a little booklet for that? What people and the participants, I want them to know, they have these small little educational booklets that they make available for free. I was going to do this as an in-person workshop, and she was sending me all of these wonderful little small credit 101 and various booklets that they make available. And I no longer say, and I just caught myself making something available for free because the city is paying for resources and NOV is paying for resources. We just make our services available at no cost to you as a small minority or disadvantaged business or any business that is seeking and desiring of help. So just know that we're going to make everything that she makes available to us at the city available to you. All of the PowerPoint, I did see your emails. Will the PowerPoint be made available? Yes, yes, yes. This session is actually being recorded for those that would like to, perhaps were not able to tune in. I did see a couple of the questions. Every question that was addressed to Gerri, she will be getting, and she will be responding at the conclusion of the workshop. I cannot thank you all again for your patience and your time. Please take advantage of this information. I think that one of the best things that you said at the beginning, line up financing before you need it. It reminds me of what my great grandmother say, opportunities will always present itself. The time to prepare is not when the opportunity gets there. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So we at the City of Miramar, we have these Big Connect webinars because we're trying to empower you and to give you good information. We really do believe that knowledge is power, and we want to position you to be able to get ahead of the game and to prepare yourself, your business, your credit. We're going to be offering additional opportunities very, very soon to help you with things like the NATE codes and help you understand that, the DUNS number, all of the things that you heard Gerri mention. We're working on categories and things that we're going to be doing to make sure that we help you get ready to be able to capitalize on those contracting opportunities. Thank you all again. Thank you, Gerri. Thank you, Maurice. This concludes this webinar session, and we hope that you found some of the financial strategies that we've made available to you today as a great opportunity for you to capitalize, remain stable in business, and able to navigate yourself through this COVID-19 crisis. Thank you again for tuning
And
in.
Dr. Hollis, one
Yes,
more
ma'am.
quick, I
Yes.
realized I didn't give you the link. There is a link where you
Yes.
can sign up for a free NAV account and get a copy of my book in the mail, my
Excellent.
Finance Your Own book. But I can't send it through the Q&A for some reason, so I'll send it to you. So
Yes,
anybody is
and Paul will
interested,
make available.
yes, and you do need to use that link if you sign up for a NAV account, but it will get you a book as well. So hopefully you'll find that helpful.
Excellent. I think that's going to be a great resource. You see, we just keep making more things available to you at no cost to you. Thank you again for tuning in. We truly appreciate your support and continued support of the BID program, as well as the City of Miramar, the Economic Business Development Program, which is in leadership through our director, Anita Taylor, and all of the wonderful things that we're making available to you all. Please go onto the City of Miramar's website and see what's being made available so that you can access those things as well as all of the things that our presenters have made available to you today. Have a great afternoon, and please continue to be safe. Bye-bye.